Okay, so this is demoing how to do multi-node training on Lightning. Um, you can see I'm currently on an 8 GPU H100, interruptible because I don't really care if we get interrupted during this demo. The studio here is going to be our master node, aka node rank 0, and we're going to be trying out two node training for our pathology foundation model code. The current node has its own master address, and that needs to be relayed to all the other nodes. So for the current node that we're on, you can see that we are in the home directory. We're going to cd into this repositories directory, and then we're going to run the current script, run.sh. And you will see that it says starting training, and then it outputs what the master address is. So before we spin up the other nodes, we first need to do this script on the master node, the studio instance, and then copy over the master address into this other script that we will be running on the non-master nodes. Other than that, these two scripts are basically identical. Um, so it'll take a couple minutes for me to spin up the additional non-master node. So I will first do that, and then I'll come back into showing you this script while we're waiting for that node to spin up. So to add additional nodes, we need to use multi-machine training here on the side panel. And by the way, you can see that the current script is stalled until it connects to these other nodes that it's expecting. It's expecting one other node because we set number of nodes to 2. So we need to spin up this other node. We go into multi-machine training. Let me delete this previous run I was testing with. We click new training run. We again want to use an H100 with 8 GPUs. Confirm. We only want one machine because we already have the studio instance being rank the first node. And so if we want to do 2 node training, we just need to spin up one additional H100 here. And then we won't be able to execute code directly on these new nodes. So instead, the code that we wanted to run, we need to state what that is here before we actually even launch that new node. So we need to cd into pathfm, and then we'll be running this other script, run other nodes.sh. So we will start that up. You can see that it's yellow here, meaning that the GPU has not yet been allocated. Once it's allocated, it'll turn green. And you can go to logs to see the how it's working through getting set up. So it will first need to allocate the new node, and then it will copy over all the studio data from the studio instance into the new node, and then it will execute the code that I just typed out, cding into the correct folder, and then doing the run other nodes shell script. So while we're waiting for that, let's go back here to VS Code. And so run.sh should only be used for the master node. That is this studio instance. We get the master address for the H100 that we're on. We have a master port that we set to be some arbitrarily large number that doesn't conflict with anything else. And we need that same port to also be specified in this other script that gets used by the non-master nodes. We need to specify how many nodes we're training with. Here it's 2, and each one has 8 GPUs. The master node is always rank 0. These are configurations that are specific to the code base that we're running. So like what config file we're using, where is the data located, where do you want the checkpoints to be output to. If that output directory already exists, I'm deleting it here. So make sure that you don't actually override important output directories when you're actually running your scripts. This is making sure that the Python imports are correct. It basically forces that the current folder that contains this script is in the root of your folder that contains everything. This is echoing all the variables, and then we finally run it with torchrun, specifically UV run torchrun to ensure that we're using the pre-configured UV Python package environment. So all of this stuff is specific to the like multi-node configurations. Again, how many nodes, GPUs per node, what the current rank of that node is, the master address and the master port, which need to be the same for all the nodes. And then this stuff is configuration specific to our pathology foundation model training code. Meanwhile, in run other nodes.sh, everything is essentially identical except that we're not deleting the output directory and we are not assigning the node rank to be 0. And we need to make sure that the master address is correctly the same as the master address for the this current studio instance, which we copied over here. So when we start up a new node or multiple new nodes using multi-machine training, the default environment variable node rank is set from 0 to the number of nodes that you've requested. So I created a new node with multi-machine training, and it will by default have the node rank be 0. But that's not what we want because the studio is acting as node rank 0. So this is adding 1 to whatever the default node rank environment variable is. And that will work even if you're spinning up multiple node rank, multiple machines. So if I were to do an 8-node training run, I would specify 7 nodes in the multi-machine training, and then those would initially be set to be node ranks 0 through 6. But here it will edit that to be 1 through 7, so that the studio again remains node rank 0. And then everything else is the same. So let's check back in on the new node. You can see that it's still getting set up. It'll take a couple minutes for it to finish copying over everything, and I'll check back in when that's done. I should also mention, actually, this is important, if your code is going to be interfacing with weights and biases, then you first need to make sure that you are set up for weights and biases. So for instance, you can cd into the code base. You can activate the UV environment, and then you can do weights and biases login to make sure that you're logged in already. Then weights and biases init to make sure that you're correctly in the project that you want. I've already configured this in this folder, so that's why I didn't do it before. But if you haven't run anything yet in the studio, you will first need to configure your weights and biases for that. Oh, I think we timed this perfectly. So it has copied over all the studio data now, and you can see that it has started running the shell script. It is correctly using the master address that we specified. It is rank 1, and now it should be interfacing with the studio master node. And yep, you can see now it has started running the script. So the studio node was previously waiting to connect to the specified number of nodes that we had picked as number of nodes. But then once it has connected to the intended number of nodes, it finishes waiting and then proceeds to training the model. And you can see that it has correctly created a new weights and biases project training run, which is here. And it will start training. So yep, it says starting training from iteration 0 out of the total number of iterations that I set up in the config folder. And it is now running. So that is great. And if we refresh the weights and biases, we might even see the training charts. Yep, there it is. So here's like the loss of the first step. And that is how you do multi-node training with Lightning. And here you can see it's moving on to the next couple iterations.